All right, so today we're going to get into something a little bit prickly, maybe a little bit thorny.
Ooh, thorny.
We're going to do a deep dive into narcissistic relationships.
Okay.
So we're looking at a book called Disarming the Narcissist by Wendy Behary.
Yeah.
And the idea is to really give you some practical tools from not just surviving, but thriving.
Right.
When you're dealing with, these personalities.
These big personalities.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating book because it really goes beyond just, the typical, narcissists are bad.
Yeah.
And really tries to understand, why do they do this? And that really is the key to learning how to deal with them.
Right, and how to kind of approach these relationships.
Yeah.
It's funny, I was talking to a friend, and they were describing their boss.
Uh-huh.
And I swear, every other sentence was something straight out of this book.
Oh, really?
It was like textbook.
Classic.
Yeah.
Well, she starts off by really defining the core characteristics of narcissism. And it's more than just loving the mirror a little too much.
Right.
We're talking about a really inflated sense of importance.
Okay.
Lack of empathy.
Yeah.
A constant need for admiration.
Okay. That definitely tracks with my friend's boss. But here's where it gets interesting.
Yeah.
She links these traits back to childhood experiences.
Okay.
And get this, both excessive praise and harsh criticism
Interesting.
can lead to similar outcomes.
Now, how does that work?
Yeah, how does that happen?
Right. It seems paradoxical, but if you think about it, both extremes could really warp a child's sense of self.
Okay.
So constant praise creates this really fragile ego that needs constant validation. And then harsh criticism can lead to this deep-seated need to prove their worth.
Oh, wow.
So both paths lead to that same kind of insatiable hunger for admiration and, a lack of consideration for others.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like two sides of the same coin kind of leading to these
outcome.
Yeah, these issues in adulthood.
Yeah.
But it's not just childhood experiences at play here, is it?
Yeah.
She also talks about how schemas shape our perceptions and our reactions.
All right. Schemas are these mental frameworks that we develop, based on early experiences, like a blueprint that shapes how we see ourselves, how we see others, how we see the world around us.
So is she saying everybody has schemas, or are there specific types that are linked to narcissism?
Everyone develops schemas, but certain types are very relevant to narcissism.
Okay.
She focuses on what she calls the entitlement schema
Okay.
and the control schema.
Interesting.
And these are these deeply ingrained beliefs
Yeah.
that fuel their need for admiration, sense of superiority, and their manipulative tactics to maintain control.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like those schemas are like the engine behind so many of these.
Driving force.
Yeah, the driving force behind these behaviors that we find so frustrating.
Yeah.
So if we're talking about, mental blueprints and how our brains are wired, does that mean that there's a biological component to this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The book doesn't dive deep into the neurobiology,
Right.
but she does mention how different areas of the brain process emotions and rational thought.
Okay.
And, for some individuals, those pathways might be wired in a way that makes, empathy and emotional regulation more challenging.
So it's not an excuse for bad behavior,
Right.
but it helps to kind of explain,
To understand.
understand why some people might really struggle
Yeah.
to understand the feelings of others.
It's like trying to see color when you've only ever known black and white.
Wow.
It's not that they're choosing to be callous. It's that they just might literally have a harder time grasping those nuances of human emotion.
Okay, so that's starting to paint a clearer picture
Yeah.
of, how narcissism develops and how it kind of manifests.
Yeah.
But let's shift gears for a second.
Okay.
What about us,
Yeah.
the people on the receiving end
Yeah, the victims. Yeah.
of this?
The book talks about personal traps.
Yeah.
What are those exactly?
It's like those emotional soft spots
Okay.
that make us particularly susceptible to a narcissist's tactics.
Okay.
So it might be a need for approval,
Okay.
a tendency to be a people pleaser, or maybe a fear of conflict
Right.
that keeps you from setting boundaries.
What's funny? Now that you mention it, I can see those tendencies in myself.
Oh, yeah.
Especially that people-pleasing thing.
Uh-huh.
I hate rocking the boat.
Right.
So I will bend over backwards to keep everybody happy.
And that's precisely what a narcissist will pick up on.
Oh, really?
They're incredibly attuned to these vulnerabilities,
Okay.
and they will exploit them
Wow.
to their advantage.
So they kind of have a radar.
Yeah.
For these.
Emotional weakness.
Yeah.
And they know exactly which buttons to push
Oh, God.
to get what they want.
So knowing our personal traps is essential,
Yes.
but then what?
how do we actually communicate with a narcissist
Right.
without getting sucked into their drama or letting them walk all over us?
Right. Well, that's where she introduces this concept called empathic confrontation.
Empathic confrontation.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm intrigued.
It sounds like an oxymoron, but stay with me.
Okay, how do you confront somebody who seemingly lacks empathy?
It's about finding that balance between understanding their perspective,
Okay.
like where are these hurtful behaviors stemming from,
Okay.
but at the same time, firmly asserting your own needs and boundaries.
Okay.
So it's not about condoning their actions,
Got it.
but it's about acknowledging their feelings in a way that kind of disarms them.
Okay, so it's not about attacking them or trying to change them.
No.
It's about protecting ourselves
Yes.
and setting clear boundaries.
One of the biggest obstacles to effective communication is that narcissists are masters of manipulation.
Oh yeah, they are good at it.
They will use guilt trips, gaslighting, charm offensives to maintain control and deflect responsibility.
Okay, so we need to be aware of those tactics
Yes.
and learn how to not fall for them.
It's like you need a whole new communication playbook.
Yeah.
You've got to stay calm,
Okay.
assertive,
Uh-huh.
and you've got to recognize those manipulation attempts in real time.
So what does that look like in practice? Can you give me an example?
Let's say a narcissist is trying to guilt you into doing something
Okay.
that you're not comfortable with.
Yeah.
Instead of getting defensive or giving in,
Uh-huh.
you could say something like, I understand that you're feeling frustrated,
Okay.
but that doesn't change my decision. I'm not willing to do that.
Wow. That's
So-
so much more powerful
Right.
than getting caught up in their emotional whirlwind.
Yeah, you're not letting them dictate the terms of engagement.
Yeah.
You're staying grounded.
It's about protecting yourself
Yes,
and not playing their game.
exactly. And speaking of challenging scenarios,
Yes.
she delves into a really tricky one.
Okay.
Co-parenting with a narcissist?
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's a whole other level
It is.
of complexity.
It is.
How do you even begin to navigate that?
Well, the first thing to remember is that the child's emotional well-being
Yeah.
should always be the top priority.
Of course.
It's about putting their needs
Okay.
above the narcissist's need for control or attention.
But how do you do that when the other parent is constantly trying to undermine you or turn the children against you?
It's incredibly difficult, but she offers some really practical advice.
Okay.
One key strategy is to set clear boundaries
Okay.
and enforce them consistently, just like we talked about earlier.
Right.
This creates a sense of stability for the children
Yeah.
and minimizes the narcissist's opportunities for manipulation.
So boundaries are key.
Yes.
But what else can we do to protect our children in this situation?
Another crucial element is effective communication.
Right.
She stresses the importance of keeping communication factual,
Okay.
documented,
Uh-huh.
and emotionally neutral.
So it's almost like you're creating a buffer zone
Yes.
or a shield
Yes.
to kind of protect yourself and your children
with a
from
hand.
this emotional volatility.
And just as importantly, you need to shield your children from the conflict as much as possible.
Yeah.
So you're not having arguments in front of them.
Okay.
You're not using them as messengers.
Right.
And you're providing a stable, loving environment where they feel safe and supported.
So it sounds like a constant balancing act,
It can be.
trying to protect yourself and your children
Yeah,
while still navigating this co-parenting relationship.
it absolutely is. But remember, you're not alone.
Right.
She emphasizes the importance of seeking support,
Yeah.
therapy, support groups,
Yeah.
trusted friends and family.
It takes a village.
It does. Having that network of support can make all the difference.
That's such an important reminder.
Yeah.
We don't have to go through this alone.
No, you don't.
And to help us navigate these complexities, she
Yeah.
provides what she calls the 7 gifts of communication with a narcissist.
With a narcissist.
These are key takeaways,
Yeah.
almost like golden nuggets of wisdom
Yes.
to help us approach these interactions more strategically.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear about these 7 gifts. What's the first one?
The first gift is the ability to understand the narcissist's feelings
Okay.
without endorsing their behavior.
Right, and that goes back to what we were discussing earlier with empathic confrontation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's realizing that their behavior is often driven by deep-seated insecurities,
Okay.
even if it doesn't justify their actions.
Right. It's like recognizing that their behavior is often a symptom of something deeper,
Yes,
even if it doesn't excuse it.
exactly. And the second gift is Clear and direct communication.
Okay.
So no more beating around the bush, no more subtle hints,
Right.
just straightforward, assertive language that leaves no room for misinterpretation.
So it's about setting those clear boundaries we talked
Yeah,
about.
exactly.
And communicating them
Yes,
in a way that leaves no wiggle room for them to exploit.
exactly. And gift number 3 is all about those boundaries,
Okay.
setting them, communicating them,
Right.
and most importantly, enforcing them consistently.
Okay.
Because narcissists will constantly test those limits.
Right.
So you have to be prepared to follow through with consequences if they're crossed.
So it sounds like consistency is key here,
It is.
both for our own sanity
Yes.
and to create a sense of stability
Exactly.
for the children.
Right.
What's the fourth gift?
Patience.
Patience.
Lots and lots of patience.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Dealing with a narcissist requires a superhuman level of patience.
Oh, I bet.
Because they will push your buttons. They will try to bait you into
Yeah,
arguments.
that reaction.
And they will do everything in their power to get a rise out of you.
It's like they thrive on that chaos and drama.
Exactly. So the key is to respond thoughtfully
Uh-huh.
rather than reacting impulsively.
Okay.
So take your time, breathe, and choose your battles wisely.
So it's about managing our own emotional state. Yes.
And not letting them dictate the terms of engagement.
Precisely. And that takes us to the 5th gift, which might be the most important one for your own sanity.
Okay.
Self-care.
Self-care.
This one is crucial because dealing with a narcissist can be incredibly draining,
Yeah.
both emotionally and mentally.
I can imagine.
It's so easy to get caught up in their drama,
Uh-huh.
their demands, their constant need for attention,
Yeah.
that we neglect our own needs.
So this is where we prioritize our own well-being,
Yes.
right? Making sure we're taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
So we can show up as our best selves.
Yes.
For our children and for ourselves.
Exactly. It's about filling our own cups.
Okay.
So we have something to give.
What are the last 2 gifts?
Gift number 6 is all about keeping perspective.
Oh, okay.
Remember, the narcissist's behavior is ultimately a reflection of them, not you.
Okay.
It's not personal, even though it might feel that way.
Yeah.
It's about their own insecurities, their own distorted worldview, their own inability to regulate their emotions.
So it's about detaching from their drama
Yes.
and not taking it on as our own burden.
Exactly. And finally, the 7th gift is finding moments of gratitude.
Okay.
I know this might sound crazy, especially when you're in the thick of it,
Yeah.
but even in challenging situations, there are always things to be grateful for.
It's about focusing on the positive,
Yes,
even when surrounded by negativity.
precisely. It's about appreciating the good things in our lives.
Yeah.
Our children, our support systems, the lessons we're learning along the way.
Well, that's quite a toolkit.
It is.
I can see how understanding and applying these 7 gifts
Yeah,
could make a world of difference
absolutely.
when it comes to navigating these types of relationships.
Yeah, it's not about changing the narcissist.
Right.
It's about empowering ourselves
Yeah.
to respond more effectively
Mm-hmm.
and to protect our own well-being in the process.
This has been incredibly insightful,
Good.
but I have to admit, putting these gifts into practice,
Yeah.
especially in the heat of the moment, seems incredibly challenging.
It can be.
Do you have any advice for our listeners on how to actually integrate these strategies into their daily lives?
That's a great question. It's one thing to understand these concepts intellectually,
Right.
but it's another thing entirely to apply them in real-life situations
Yeah.
when emotions are running high.
Right.
But don't worry, we're going to dive into how to actually use these gifts
Okay.
later.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Me too.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break.
Yes.
And when we come back,
Yeah.
we're going to be talking about
Putting these into practice.
exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody stay with us.
Stay tuned.
Okay. I think we need to unpack these 7 gifts one by one
Yeah.
because they're like gold nuggets of wisdom,
Yeah,
but they're also a bit abstract.
they are.
So help us bridge the gap between theory and practice.
Okay.
What does it really look like
Yeah.
to apply these gifts in the wild, so to speak?
Right. So it can feel daunting. I
Right.
know. But let's start with that first gift.
Okay.
Understanding the narcissist's feelings without endorsing their behavior.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Yeah.
When their actions are hurtful
Right.
or seem completely unreasonable?
Yeah.
It feels counterintuitive to try to empathize with somebody who lacks empathy.
It is tricky, but remember we talked about those schemas.
Yeah.
That underlying sense of entitlement
Right.
and need for control,
But,
those come from somewhere.
uh-huh.
Their actions might be coming from a place of deep insecurity,
Uh-huh.
fear of abandonment,
Yeah.
or a desperate craving for validation.
So it's about recognizing that their behavior is often a symptom of something deeper,
Yes.
even if it doesn't excuse their actions.
Exactly.
It's like understanding the source of a river
Mm-hmm.
without condoning the flood it might cause.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
And understanding that source can help us respond more strategically.
Yes.
Which leads us perfectly to the second gift.
Yes.
Clear and direct communication.
Clear and direct communication.
Because I'm starting to see how hinting or tiptoeing around issues
Yeah.
would be a disaster with a narcissist.
Absolutely. They'll twist your words, they'll read between the lines, and they'll find any ambiguity to exploit.
Oh, wow.
Remember, they thrive on control.
Yeah.
So clear communication takes away that leverage.
Okay.
It's about being firm, specific,
Right.
and leaving no room for misinterpretation.
Okay, so instead of saying you're always late,
Right.
which is vague and invites defensiveness,
Yes.
I could say, when you were 30 minutes late for our meeting today, it made me feel disrespected and like my time isn't valued.
Exactly. You're focusing on a specific instance
Right.
and its impact on you, rather than making sweeping generalizations.
Yeah.
It's much harder for them to deflect that.
Okay.
And clear communication is also essential when setting boundaries.
Right.
Which brings us to gift number 3.
Boundaries.
Boundaries.
I'm starting to see how this all ties together.
Yes.
So we've communicated clearly what we will and won't accept. Right.
But as you said earlier, narcissists love to test those boundaries.
Yes, they do.
What do we do when they inevitably try to push those limits?
Then we enforce them.
Okay.
And that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Because it requires consistency, which can be exhausting.
Right.
But remember, each time you give in, you reinforce their belief that they can manipulate you.
So even if it's a seemingly small thing,
Right.
like agreeing to reschedule an appointment for their convenience,
Yeah.
when it throws your whole day off,
Exactly.
that reinforces that they can control your time.
Each time you hold firm, you're reclaiming your power
Okay.
and demonstrating that your needs matter.
But I know this is easier said than done.
Oh,
It can be incredibly frustrating,
it can.
which is probably why patience is gift number 4.
Exactly. You need the patience of a saint dealing with a narcissist.
I bet.
They will try to provoke you, gaslight.
Yeah.
You play the victim, anything to get a reaction.
Yeah.
But feeding into that drama only gives them what they want. It's almost like you're training yourself to stay calm amidst a hurricane.
Yeah.
And they're trying to blow you off course.
Yes.
But you're holding steady.
That's a great visual.
Yeah.
It takes practice, but the more you can detach from their emotional whirlwind, the more power you retain.
Right.
And that takes us to the 5th gift,
Okay.
which might be the most important one for your own sanity.
Okay.
Self-care.
Yes, self-care.
Self-care.
The oxygen mask on the airplane analogy.
Yes.
You've got to take care of yourself first
You do.
before you can help others.
Exactly.
But how does self-care apply specifically in the context of dealing with a narcissist?
Well, it's so easy to get consumed by their drama, their demands, their constant need for attention.
Yeah.
But if you're depleted,
Uh-huh.
you're more susceptible to manipulation and more likely to react emotionally.
So it's about recognizing that protecting yourself is not selfish.
It's not.
It's essential.
It's a sad.
If you're burned out,
Right.
you can't effectively set boundaries, communicate clearly, or maintain your composure.
Exactly. Self-care looks different for everyone.
Right.
It might be meditation, a hot bath, a walk in nature,
Uh-huh.
or simply saying no to extra commitments.
Yeah.
Whatever helps you recharge and stay grounded.
Okay. So we're staying calm. We're
Yeah.
setting boundaries. We're taking care of ourselves.
Yes.
What are the last 2 gifts to help us navigate this tricky terrain?
The 6th gift is about keeping perspective.
Okay.
Remember, the narcissist's behavior is a reflection of their own internal world,
Okay.
their own insecurities and distortions.
Uh-huh.
It's not about you, even though it often feels intensely personal.
So even when they're spewing venom,
Yeah,
it's not really about me.
it's not.
It's about their own internal turmoil.
Exactly. It's about detaching from that drama,
Okay.
recognizing it's not your responsibility to fix them
Right.
or take on their emotional baggage.
That's such a freeing realization.
It is.
So what's the final gift?
The 7th and perhaps most challenging gift is finding moments of gratitude.
Okay.
It might sound counterintuitive when you're feeling drained and frustrated,
Uh-huh.
but gratitude can be a powerful antidote to negativity.
I see how that could shift your perspective.
Yeah.
Even in a difficult situation, there are things to be thankful for.
Yes.
our health, our loved ones, the lessons we're learning.
Exactly. Gratitude helps us refocus on the positive, to recognize that even challenging experiences
Yeah.
can offer opportunities for growth and resilience.
This has been so incredibly helpful in breaking down these 7 gifts.
Good.
But now I'm wondering, what about the specific scenario of co-parenting with a narcissist?
Yes.
How do these gifts apply when children are involved?
Yeah.
It seems so much more complex.
You're absolutely right. Co-parenting with a narcissist adds another layer of complexity
Yeah.
and emotional intensity.
Because now you're not just protecting yourself,
Right.
you're also protecting your children.
And that's what we'll explore next, after a quick break.
Okay, so you're back. And I gotta say, thinking about this whole co-parenting with a narcissist thing
Yeah.
kind of makes my head spin a little bit.
It's tough.
It's like navigating a minefield, but
Right.
with, your child's well-being
Yes.
at stake.
Absolutely.
It's just so much more
high stakes.
emotionally charged.
It is, and it's where those 7 gifts become even more crucial,
Yeah.
but also maybe even more challenging to implement.
Right, because how do we actually do that?
Yeah.
How do we shield them when the narcissist might be trying to use them as pawns
Right.
in their games, or undermine our authority, or even turn them against us?
Well, first you have to accept that you can't control the narcissist.
Okay.
You can't force them to be a good parent
Right.
or to suddenly develop empathy.
Right.
What you can control is your own behavior
Okay.
and the environment that you create for your children.
So it's about shifting our focus from what we can't change
Yes.
to what we can?
Exactly.
Okay, but it still feels overwhelming.
I know.
Where do we even begin?
It starts with those boundaries that we've been talking about.
Okay.
Just like in any relationship with a narcissist, clear boundaries are crucial
Yeah,
in
right.
co-parenting.
Okay.
So think about things like consistent pickup and drop-off times,
Right.
communication protocols,
Okay.
maybe sticking to email to avoid those heated phone calls.
Yeah, good idea.
Clear decision-making processes.
So we're creating structure,
Structure, yes.
a framework that limits
Yeah,
their opportunities for manipulation and control.
exactly.
And it's about predictability for the child.
Predictability, yes, and just as importantly, enforcing those boundaries consistently.
Okay.
So if they try to, change plans last minute, guilt you into doing something you're uncomfortable with, or overstep in any way,
Right.
you hold firm.
Okay, but what if they just ignore the boundaries?
They might.
Yeah.
But remember, each time you give in, you're just reinforcing that they can manipulate the situation.
Right.
It's hard, but it's about thinking long term. Okay.
Consistency is key, both for your sanity and for your child's sense of stability.
So boundaries are crucial, but communication
Yes.
with a narcissistic co-parent
Right.
seems like walking a tightrope.
It can be. Yeah.
Any tips on how to navigate that?
This is where that second gift, clear and direct communication,
Okay.
becomes your lifeline.
Uh-huh.
She suggests keeping all communication factual,
Okay.
documented, and emotionally neutral,
Okay.
especially if legal issues are a concern.
So imagine I need to discuss a change in, the child's after-school schedule.
Right.
Instead of engaging in a long, potentially emotionally charged phone call,
Right.
I would send a clear, concise email
Yeah.
with the specific details.
Yes, it might feel cold or impersonal,
Yeah.
but you're protecting yourself from manipulation.
Right.
And you're creating a paper trail,
Uh-huh.
which can be crucial in legal situations.
Okay.
It takes the emotionality out of it.
Okay. This is all starting to make sense.
Good.
But let's get real for a second.
How do we protect our kids
Right.
from the emotional fallout of this?
Yes.
What if they're bad-mouthing us, trying to turn them against us, or just creating a generally toxic environment?
It's heartbreaking. I know.
Yeah.
But here's where your role as a safe haven becomes paramount.
Okay.
You provide that counterbalance,
Yeah.
that unwavering source of love and support.
Right.
It's about creating a home environment where they feel heard,
Yeah.
understood, and unconditionally loved.
So it's about consistency, not just in boundaries,
Yes,
but in our emotional presence.
exactly. You're that steady rock amidst the storm.
And equally important is teaching our children healthy coping skills.
Yes.
So we can talk to them age-appropriately about recognizing manipulative behavior,
Yeah.
setting their own boundaries,
Oh.
and understanding that their self-worth is not tied to
Right.
what this person says or does.
It's like we're equipping them with their own emotional toolkit,
Yeah.
giving them the power to navigate this challenging relationship.
And remember, you're not alone in this.
No, you're not.
Therapists,
Support groups,
support groups, online community.
online communities, yes.
There are resources out there
There are.
for parents co-parenting with narcissists.
Exactly. It can be isolating.
Yeah.
So finding that support network is essential.
This has been so incredibly valuable.
Good. I'm glad.
It's a tough subject, but I feel so much more equipped now
Yeah.
to approach it with intention and a plan.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts for our listeners who might be feeling overwhelmed by this challenge?
Remember those 7 gifts? They're not just abstract concepts.
Yeah.
They're practical tools that can help you navigate any relationship with a narcissist.
Right.
Knowledge is power, and understanding the dynamics at play can really shift the balance.
Uh-huh.
It's not about winning or losing.
Right.
It's about protecting yourself and your children
Yeah.
and creating a more peaceful and stable environment.
I love that. Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive,
We have.
but the conversation doesn't end here.
No, it doesn't.
I encourage you to pick up Disarming the Narcissist
Yes.
and continue exploring these strategies.
It's an ongoing process of learning and growth.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.
We'll be back next time
Yes.
with another fascinating exploration
Yes.
of the human experience.